the measurement was taken from back of curb instead of property line, which shifted, we're asking for a 9-foot variance
9
because
foot.
it turns out he thought he was doing extra good and scooted it back another foot.
We thought so.
So we thought that, so instead of 10 feet, we're actually at about 9 feet. That's the 9 feet for both of these lots is how much we're encroaching into that.
Correct.
Into that 25-foot front yard setback.
So
So to answer your question, Katie, we are actually 25 feet back, a little more than 25 feet back from the back of the curb.
Got it.
And we've not identified, we've driven through, there's not a visibility issue there. We've actually maintained side yard, much larger of a side yard
And
along
back.
Rock Castle, and back
And back.
and rear yard along Rock Castle than there was required. So essentially, these houses got shifted 10 feet forward. And they did get approved through our office on site as well.
Another question, just for my own self, is it typical in town, is it typical in Berea that it's from the back of curb? Or is it not typical that it's from back of curb?
So it depends on, the measurement is required to be taken from the property line.
Right. Is that typically back of curb
But-
in town?
But it depends. It depends on what road you're on and what that right-of-way width is. And so many of our, what I call older parts of town, older subdivisions,
without a sidewalk,
without a sidewalk, that right-of-way distance is all you get, right? And so the back of the curb is the property line.
so I imagine that might be where a potential source of discrepancy is the thinking, oh, there's not a sidewalk, so the property
That's
line is
exactly
actually
right.
at the back of the curb.
That's exactly right. And, I will say, just from our staff perspective, as we think that infill lots is something that we are going to start doing more of. It's in our comprehensive plan. We want more infill. And we want to make sure that these parts of town that have opportunity for new construction are getting those. We recognize that we need to, now this has probably taught us all something, that we need to either, require the survey, require the pins to be, the corners to be staked, something to make sure that we are getting these on these infill lots
Yeah, it's
where
not-
they're supposed to be.
It is unfortunate because it looks like it could conform. It just
It could.
doesn't.
We're close.
Yeah, that's right.
And the biggest thing here is we didn't try to hide anything. We asked, and we all thought the same thing.
And it really was truly not recognized until they were ready for certificate of occupancy on these homes.
And that is what's keeping us from that, correct?
That's,
So-
yes, that's right. So they've been inspected.
Sorry, to interrupt.
Commissioner
Go
Barry,
ahead.
is that a fair answer?
I would have thought that it might come up when the adjoining property was developed, but it didn't.
Yeah, it unfortunately did not.
Okay.
And again, these houses are, but yeah, for whatever reason, I don't have an answer for you as to why it wasn't recognized at that point.
And if I may, he's not as a big of a developer as the other guys. Move slower. There's a reality to that, and I think that's a very fair reality. We move slower. Nothing wrong with that. Just
Yeah.
I think it's a fair justification as to why it didn't come up in the other folks as they were coming along. We tried.
We are within everything else, the bank society.
And Ms. Haney, that's a lovely point. This is the only problem, right? Everything else has been approved
Correct.
from start to finish, and then as we were trying to finish, is that fair?
That's where we are. So we're all asking for forgiveness.
Well, and I think, and that's fair. And hey, there's nobody here pointing a finger at anybody. I poked my client and said, hey, it's as much your fault as anybody's, but there's reality to this. It's wrong. I'm asking for a variance because it's wrong. The reason why it's wrong, I kind of think is irrelevant at this point. However, I do believe that it certainly comes within the findings of fact that you can make. I think this is a special circumstance. It's a very unique circumstance. Please don't make my client tear down his new houses that he built, ultimately.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, finish your, sorry.
No, and if, I'm happy to field any questions, and I love discussion. That's the only way we can work through things together. However, I do wish to make a record prior to the end of my stump speech. I would like my client I'd like to swear him in and have him adopt everything that he's heard today, just to make our record complete.
Well, we can do that
Yes.
now.
Please. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay.
If I may, please, go ahead and state your full name.
Donald E. French,
And do you own the two properties that we've been speaking about, and what are those addresses?
202 Water Street and 204 Water Street
Okay.
in
And-
Berea.
And you've heard everything I've said here today and the discussion that's occurred.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that everything that's been said has been true and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Absolutely.
That's all the questions I have. Please, if you wish to inquire, he's more than welcome to answer anything.
Well, what I was going to say earlier, I appreciate, Amanda, the mistake and identification of potential ways to avoid it in the future. I mean, whatever decision is made here, I would hope that it doesn't open the door for, intentional repeat.
I would
right.
say, if I may, that this narrows the door, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a little bit more obvious that
Right.
we're going to pay closer attention.
Yeah, I will say that to our knowledge, to my knowledge, since in my 15 years at the city, this is the first time. No, I take that back. Probably the second time that a structure's already been built before it was recognized. And it does happen. And, again, I think you get, well, we all know if you work, mistakes are going to happen, right? And so we want to try to avoid that. We want to try to make sure that everyone is understands what that right of way versus that property line is, and work to assure it doesn't happen in the future. Because I agree, there's definitely a lesson to be learned from it.
Yeah, I knew that.
I'm talking a lot. This is unrelated, but I am curious. Do you know why the development next door, and this would be a question for you, why that includes a sidewalk with the development, but this does not?
Yeah. So the developer of those there's 5 or 6 homes there, that kind of wrap Madison and Water Street there. Those were built on what were those little 50-foot lots, and so you either 50 or 25-foot lots, and so they were existing lots in the way that they used to be laid out, where you bought 2 or 3 or 4 of them, how many ever you wanted. And so he was able to fit those on there. He chose to put the sidewalk in, but I will tell you that from an infill perspective, that is the next conversation that we are going to address with our planning commission, is that currently today we do not have regulations that would make someone put their sidewalk on infill lots, but it is certainly a conversation that needs to be had. So all, certainly commercial properties, development plans, new subdivisions require them. There's nothing that addresses these infill lots specifically, but we also recognize that it is something that we need to, either we need them or we don't need them, and we've got to figure out where we're going to get these.
And if I may leave you all with any comment, I think the undue hardship to the petitioner here, if there's a question in your mind, whether you're leaning one way or the other, based on findings of fact, the undue hardship here, we're knocking down new homes. There's no way to scoot it. So I don't believe that there's been any evidence presented that would justify a finding of fact that wouldn't find an undue hardship. I think that's an absolute. There's some special circumstances here. I think that's evident, and we certainly ask you all, for the variance. And I don't believe that this would create a precedent that would be applicable in the future that we can justifiably fear. I think this is, especially when the findings of fact tell you, say, this is special. It's special. It's unique. I think Ms. Haney said that's only happened twice, and
That I could recall.
so. But I'm happy to answer any more questions. Otherwise, I'll hush and leave y'all be.
Were there any input electronically from any adjoining neighbors? Okay.
We have not, and all notices were sent as required.
Thank y'all for y'all's time.
Thank you. Unless there's some other questions or comments? The chair would entertain a motion.
Amanda, you'll probably have to help me word this a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we approve the 9-foot variance for the front setback line in an R3 zone for 202 and 204 Water Street, based on the fact that it would create an undue hardship on the applicant.
That's all we needed.
Any discussion on the motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries. For the approval of a 9-foot front setback in an R3 zone for 202 and 204 Water Street, with the
Finding.
findings of fact that there would be an undue hardship on the applicant. Thank you. Any other topics for discussion? Motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? All right. All in favor?